All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are going to unpack a really fascinating and, I gotta say, pretty provocative theory. It takes something we all know, the American Pledge of Allegiance, and completely flips it on its head. The idea here is that it's not just a patriotic verse, it's actually a powerful cognitive tool designed for a very specific purpose.
I mean, we all know this by heart, right? Think back to being a kid. The source material we're digging into today paints this perfect picture of it. Little hands over little hearts. And you can almost hear that chorus of other kids' voices booming in their young minds. It's just this foundational ritual, something millions of us did day after day after day.
And when you repeat something that often, you have to ask the question that's at the heart of this whole analysis. Beyond just being patriotic, what is this daily ritual really designed to do? What's its function on a deep cognitive level? Okay, so let's get into the core argument. The theory proposes that those familiar words are basically a mask, hiding a reality that's the complete opposite of what's being said. It's a system that the source calls, very bluntly, the scam.
Now check this out. The source doesn't just critique the pledge, it completely inverts every single ideal. America becomes Scamerica, basically framing the whole country as a giant confidence game. A republic becomes a collection of cons, suggesting the government is just an organized lie. And it's darker. Liberty is swapped for sickness and justice for servitude. It's a total 180-degree reversal.
So why? What's the logic? Well, the argument is that these big, inspiring words, God, liberty, justice, are what the source calls conveniently loose vagaries. They sound great, but they aren't real options available to you inside the system. They're just bait, designed to get you to willingly participate in your own subjugation. And, there's a kind of cold, hard economic logic to this. Why would you spend a ton of money on soldiers and police when you can design a system where people police themselves? It's just way cheaper, way more efficient, if you can get everyone to enforce their own compliance. So the big question is, how do you actually do that? How does this self-enforcement work inside our own heads? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source lays out a surprisingly sophisticated, almost mathematical model for how this whole indoctrination process works. It all boils down to this one simple but really powerful idea. Dissonance equals deviation. You know that uncomfortable, gut-wrenching feeling you get when things just don't add up? The theory says that's not a moral failing or you being difficult. Nope, it's just a statistical event. Your thoughts are simply falling outside the norm of the worldview you've been programmed with. So let's walk through how that programming happens. First, you get constant exposure to a very limited set of ideas, these restricted outputs, like saying the pledge every single day. Over time, this creates a bell curve of normal responses, with just going along with it right in the middle. Now, trying to deviate from that norm, to think outside that curve, takes a ton of mental energy. And because of that, it just becomes cognitively cheaper to accept it. Eventually, conformity becomes the path of least resistance. It feels natural. And this chart really shows it perfectly. Staying in the middle, in that state of compliance, is easy. It requires very little cognitive energy. But trying to move to either side, into dissent, that's exhausting. It costs you. The entire system is basically engineered to make just going along with it feel like the easiest, most natural thing in the world. But here's where the whole thing pivots in a really cool way. After tearing down the original pledge, the source doesn't just leave it there. It actually tries to build something new. It uses the exact same ritualistic format, but completely reconstructs it for a new purpose: liberation, not control. And just look at the difference here. Instead of pledging to a republic, which was called a con, you pledge to the needs of the people. Instead of God, or what the source reframed as denial, you pledge to shared understanding. And those vague ideals of liberty and justice get replaced with concrete human values, respect and dignity. Now, the absolute key to this new pledge is that phrase, shared understanding. Why is that the linchpin? Because unlike words like liberty, you can't easily twist it. It's not vague. It requires real, collective verification between people. You either have a shared understanding or you don't, and that acts as a kind of built-in defense against manipulation. Okay, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the liberation strategy. And honestly, this might be the most provocative idea of them all.
It suggests that real freedom doesn't come from fighting the system head-on. It comes from something much more internal, withdrawing the mental energy that keeps the whole thing running. The source throws out this really interesting thought experiment, this hunch about a 4-to-1 ratio. The idea is that for every one person who's truly malicious, there are 4 decent people. And if that's even close to true, it means the system can only work by propping up that destructive minority and completely exhausting the decent majority. Which leads to this massive question. What if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if the system's greatest weapon isn't guns or laws, but just making us tired? It keeps control by keeping us so drained, so busy trying to make sense of all the contradictions, that we never have the energy left to actually build something better.
So what's the strategy? It's a conscious withdrawal. First, you just acknowledge what the system is designed to do, extract value. Then, you actively stop wasting your precious mental energy trying to make its lies make sense. You reclaim your cognitive power from that endless cycle of outrage and confusion. And then, you use that freed up energy to start building a new reality, one based on those real values, shared understanding, respect, and dignity.
And really, that's the final takeaway. The core argument here is that real, lasting change starts inside. It doesn't begin with a big, loud fight, but with a quiet, powerful, and deeply personal choice. The simple refusal to keep believing a lie.